Hey there, thank you for joining us. My name is Brett Wells, and I'm a technical representative with Sigma Photo. Today I'd like to share with you a walkthrough of the FP Streamlined interface and share some tips on how to quickly and easily navigate through the camera's operational modes and menu system. To begin, let's take a look at the camera's top plate. Working from left to right, we have the power switch, the operational mode switch, the record button, the top command dial, and the shutter button. Most of these buttons' functions are pretty self-explanatory, but the operational mode switch is one that's unique to the FP, so let's take a closer look at that for a moment before we move on. The operational mode switch has options for either cine or still, and the position of this switch will orient the camera's features and menu options for either motion or stills capture, depending on which position is selected. This allows you to easily streamline your system, capture, and display options based on how you're using the camera without needing to dig through the full menu and reprogram every time you transition back or forth. Moving on to the rear of the camera, let's start by covering the controls to the right of the FP's touchscreen. Working our way from top to bottom, we have an auto exposure lock button, a QS button, the rear command dial, and our menu button. Most of these buttons are pretty commonly implemented among other camera models and have pretty straightforward functions, but the QS button is another that's a little unique to the FP, so let's explore the function a little further. Pressing the QS button brings up the Quick Set menu, which provides easy access to 8 parameters relating to capture settings, allowing you to quickly make changes without needing to dig into the full menu system. The parameters that populate the Quick Set menu can also be reprogrammed for even greater versatility. When the AEL Further Options icon is displayed in the lower right-hand corner, pressing the AEL button will expand your setting options for the parameter at hand. Next, let's cover the buttons along the base of the camera. Working from left to right, we have our playback mode button, a display mode button, tone and color buttons, and our exposure mode button. Most of these have pretty self-explanatory functions as well, but the tone and color options in the FP are a little unique, so let's take a closer look at those. The tone button controls the contrast profile applied to your images. You have options for mild and strong auto settings, as well as a manual option to allow you to specify shadow and highlight treatment. You can also turn tone profiles off entirely. The color button controls the color profile applied to your images. You'll find all the standard color treatment options here, plus a few that are unique to the FP, such as the cinematic teal and orange and the Foveon color profiles. You also have the option to turn color profiles off entirely if you're looking for a flatter rendition. Now that we've covered the external buttons, let's dive into navigating the camera's main menu system. We'll start by covering a few basics on general navigation. Let's press the menu button to begin. As we move into the camera's menu system, you'll see 3 primary tabs at the top of the screen labeled Shoot, Play, and System. These tabs group the pages that list out individual setting options based on the category of camera functions affected. The top command dial allows you to move through menu pages quickly, and the rear command dial allows you to move through the individual menu options. Once you have a menu option highlighted, pressing the center button on the rear command dial will bring up the settings submenu. Pressing the menu button will take you back one level if you need to navigate out of a submenu. If a menu option is grayed out, that means the option is currently unavailable due to other settings in use. Selecting a grayed out setting will bring up an explanation of why it's currently unavailable. It's also worth noting that part of the FP's differentiation between the cine and still capture modes impacts the individual setting options that populate the shoot and system tabs of the menu. The settings that are tied to capture mode are indicated by either a cine or still icon in the menu item listing, and these items will only be visible when the camera is set to that respective capture mode. Now that we've got the basics covered, let's take a closer look at the layout of the tabs and pages that make up the camera's menu system. The first tab is labeled Shoot, and as you might expect, this tab covers settings pertaining to how the camera behaves while in capture mode. Scrolling through, we have 6 pages of options that include all the usual settings affecting exposure, audio capture, focus, and so forth. You'll also find options to customize your display settings while in capture mode and to reprogram a number of the camera's buttons. Keep in mind that the settings shown in the Shoot tab will change depending on whether the camera is in cine or still capture mode. Our next tab over, the Play tab, covers settings pertaining to how you view, organize, and modify the content you've captured to the SD card. These 2 pages contain the usual options for playback filtering, editing, and display options. You'll also find options for in-camera development of raw DNG still files, as well as creating in-camera cinemagraphs from video files here. The options available on these 2 pages remain the same regardless of which capture mode the camera is currently set to. Our final tab to the right, the System tab, covers settings pertaining to the camera's broader operational functions. These 5 pages contain the usual options for modifying the camera's file handling, sounds, and display settings. Here you'll also find options for customizing the Quick Set menu and the display mode settings. Just as we saw with the Shoot menu tab, the settings shown in the System tab will change depending on whether the camera is in cine or still capture mode. And that concludes our walkthrough of the FP's buttons and menu system. I hope you found it informative. If you'd like to learn more, you can find detailed information on the FP's product page at sigmaphoto.com, along with a dealer locator to find a retailer near you. Thank you again for joining us. Take care.